Let's talk about feedback research. This is fascinating stuff. First, let's distinguish between ego-involving and task-involving evaluation. Ego-involving evaluation is judgment upon the quality of the work, usually relying on number or letter grades. Task-involving evaluation is where the comments are directed at ways for the work to be improved. Ego-involving evaluation, either in conjunction with or in the absence of task-involving feedback, undermined interest for striving learners, even though high achievers were fine. Interest was maintained for both groups when the feedback was solely task-involving. This was eye-opening to us and became a deciding factor in our elimination of grades. It is why we call the book Going Gradeless. Grades, as most of us use them, are evaluative, and research shows that students generally stop reading once they've looked at the grades and then compared themselves to how others performed. You know how you find yourself writing the same exact comments on their paper each time, to no effect? These comments go unattended to, as if the grade itself erases all of the descriptive feedback that you have provided, whether good or bad. Evaluative feedback is ego-involving. It's so much easier for me in the short term to give evaluative feedback. Comments like, "Great, good work. Didn't you read the instructions?" seem justified in the interest of my time and energy, especially when it feels like they don't read them anyway. Writing -5 or +1 should be obvious, right? Yet research shows that comments like these do not cause meaningful change in student work. In all honesty, I still struggle with this, often deleting my original comments and rewriting them to address specifics about their work, as opposed to make generalities or more personal judgments. Descriptive feedback provides feedback to a student that's specifically related to the learner outcomes. It highlights what has been done well and prompts further thought. Through comments and questions, it models the use of language of the outcomes. And if used in assessment for learning, provides opportunities for students to improve their work. This may seem more time-consuming, but since you're only focused on helping students progress just to the very next level, it actually doesn't take any more time. It is impossible to eliminate evaluative feedback altogether. The best you can do is minimize it as much as possible. If you must give grades weekly, put as much time as possible in between the descriptive and the evaluative feedback. This is a rubric used to assess interpersonal speaking in a world language class. At first glance, you may find yourself nodding your head, finding this to be perfectly normal. But there are issues with the language used that makes it ego-involving and therefore evaluative. What makes this evaluative? Using percentages to evaluate each level does not overtly describe what students can do correctly at that level. The descriptions of demonstrating growth are really vague. What's the difference between limited growth, and consistent growth? More personally, when Dave and I designed our first learning progressions, we had a rubric with similar issues. We used numbers for the level, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and still had very ego-involving descriptions within our rubric. You can see examples of this in the book. It took another year or two before we came across this particular research and radically changed our use of language. The example here is from my current rubric. What makes this task involving? Focus on the segment circled. The description focuses on characteristics of the response. Correctly choose and overtly state relevant physics. Every word tells students what I'm looking for. If they earn that level, they know what skill they've exhibited. There is no numerical evaluation. In order to know how they are doing, they must understand the description and read the accompanying feedback. What if we combine the styles of feedback? The two options are being descriptive and evaluative, or being non-descriptive and non-evaluative. As discussed, providing any evaluative feedback immediately shuts down the conversation about what to do next time. Therefore, this isn't useful for student growth. However, even without evaluative feedback, if you don't provide specific directed feedback related to the outcomes you're looking for, students cannot take action. Research shows that neither combination will result in change. This is a rubric that I used in 2012 and was one style that I typically used at that time. Will this result in descriptive or evaluative feedback or a combination? Pause the video here and look it over. This will provide only evaluative feedback, since everything is numerical. In addition, the names of the scores are ego-involving, using words like excellent and inadequate. If you look at the descriptors of what is being assessed, like consists of 5 pivot points, is kinetic, these are checklists and prescriptive, not skills-based. In the Going Gradeless book, you can see an example of the more recent rubric I use for all projects. The engineering design process has a learning progression that is generic enough for any project I choose to assign, including one like this. I would put all the specific and detailed requirements in the assignment description instead. How does the learning progression model incorporate feedback research? Primarily by focusing as much as possible on descriptive feedback. To the best of our abilities, we simply omit evaluative feedback. This results in students focusing on taking action. It has been a personal battle to counter a lifetime of receiving and handing out grades. I want to be honest with you, it requires a major mind shift. This is nothing to make light of. If you're anything like me, you will most likely struggle to shift your focus. Students will too. There are strategies you can employ to support yourself in making this adjustment. There are also some options to explore if you're working at a school with a traditional grading system like we do.